In my recent video on how to kill a tiger, I made a wrong statement. Although that statement was based on a source that is generally considered valid. I unlisted the video so you can still access your comments there, but it should be no longer suggested to other people. Now a big thank you here to, I can't even read your name, which is probably the best protection for me butchering your pronunciation. Nice move. You probably should teach this trick to the French. Anyway, let's move to the error. I basically stated that the Su-152 was designed as a reaction to the Tiger. Now the relevant part of the video was the following. For instance, the Soviets captured the Tiger in January 1943, yet when in July 1943 the Germans attacked at Kursk, they only had a mere 37 Su-152 heavy assault guns ready. And you need to keep in mind that this vehicle was designed and fielded extremely fast. In only 25 days during January 1943, Soviet engineers married a 152mm field gun to an obsolescent tank chassis. The new weapon entered mass production immediately. Now the error is that the Su-152 was not designed to fight the Tiger. There were other weapon systems adapted and created for this task, but not the S-152. Big thank you here to Roman Töppel and Peter from Tank Archives for confirming the comment's correctness. So the question is, how did it come to this wrong conclusion? Well, the source was a book by David Glantz and Jonathan Howes. Both are well-known and distinguished historians on the Eastern Front. For clarification, here's the full quote. Worse still for the Germans, on 14 January 1943, a Tiger tank was captured by the Red Army near Leningrad. Although alerted to this deadly new threat, the Red Army did not have sufficient time to develop a suitable antidote to the Tiger. The first Soviet tanks capable of handling the Tiger, such as the KV-85 heavy tank, did not appear until the Kursk battles. In the interim, the Soviets fielded a heavy self-propelled gun, the Su-152. In only 25 days during January 1943, Soviet engineers married a 152mm field gun to an obsolescent tank chassis. The new weapon entered mass production immediately. By May 1943, the first 4 heavy tank killer regiments, each initially having only 12 Su-152, were formed and sent to the front. Now, this passage does not directly state the Su-152 was designed to fight the Tigers, but it is heavily implied, at least from my perspective. Additionally, it was not the 14th January 1943, but the 18th. According to Wolfgang Schneider's Tigers in Combat No. 1, similarly Peter from Tank Archives noted also the 18th of January 1943. Yet the other issues are more important here. Although the Tiger was captured in January, there were no penetration tests performed until April 1943, when the Su-152 had already been designed. Additionally, after the penetration test, it was determined that the 152mm gun was not considered satisfactory to fight the Tigers. This was stated independently from Peter from Tank Archives and Roman Töppel. Nevertheless, the Su-152 was later used to fight the Tigers. Yet this is likely due to the fact that in April 1943 the People's Commissariat of the Armor Industry ordered the introduction of special shells for the 152mm guns for anti-tank combat. There were other requests to adapt to the new threat of the Tiger, but this is something I will discuss in a corrected version of the video. Similarly, the Su-152 had a longer development history that goes back to 1938 and took far longer than 25 days, and not an obsolete chassis was used, according to Peter from Tank Archives. Hence, although the Su-152 was later used to fight Tigers, it was not intended as such. Peter from Tank Archives sent me a long email explaining various parts and added this great conclusion. The Su-152 was the last stage in a development process that began in 1938 and definitely had nothing to do with the Tiger. No heavy tank destroyer projects were launched in response to the Tiger's appearance until the spring, when the Su-152 design was already completed. The main Armor and Tank Directorate did not consider the Su-152 an entirely satisfactory anti-tank weapon and ordered a custom-built tank destroyer for this purpose. Note, once errors or similar issues are found in my videos, I add them to a pinned comment at the top. so always to be sure to check this out. Because there's no other way to do this on YouTube, because you can't edit your video, and they removed annotations I think 1 year ago or something. Yet the question is, how could have this been avoided? Well, at first I thought there was no chance of catching this error without double checking every single line ever read, which would making videos like this basically impossible. Additionally, I don't have any books on the development history of the SE-152 and a lot of other stuff. And I have already quite an extensive library, and at a certain point it's definitely a storage problem. So this is a physical problem, basically a time and space problem. Yet even considering that I would have a perfect library and could look up everything, there's another problem. Because if there's a contradicting statement in one source, that doesn't necessarily mean that the other one is correct neither. Then I realized there was actually an indicator that could have led me to this error. Namely that everything happened in January 1943. Let's face it, it's extremely unlikely that the Soviets would capture a tiger in January and immediately put together a vehicle to fight the tiger. On a very good day I might have caught up to that issue. Then I would have looked at the footnote for the source, and well, this part has no footnote. At that point I would likely be at least skeptical or alert. Now I should have been more cautious, but then again it was David Glantz and Jonathan House. Now why should I have been more cautious? Well, I actually stumbled across another issue within the same book. Because it had a supposedly German account from how tigers were destroyed at close range that would perfectly fit into my video. The passage was as follows. Soviet artillerymen let them come within 500, then 400 yards. At that range even the tigers were set on fire by the heavy Russian anti-tank guns. Now you're probably gonna ask, why didn't you use this passage? Well, because I checked the footnote, and the source was a book by Paul Carrel, which is a pseudonym for Paul Karl Schmidt, who was the former chief spokesman of the Third Reich's foreign minister, von Ribbentrop. And after the war he published a lot of books with various myths about the Wehrmacht. As such, I considered this statement to be from a doubtful source and searched for an example from a more valid source. It is of course not without irony that I made the joke who would win, a comment or MHV sources in the video, which is a good reminder that even a renowned source can be wrong at times. Now if you want to do me a favor, I would be very grateful if you watch the corrected version of How to Kill a Tiger video, when it will be released. Why? Because well, the YouTube algorithm is all about initial views. Additionally, I will add some other changes as well. Now a big thank you here to the unpronounced commenter for pointing out that issue. Also a big thank you to Peter from Tank Archives and of course Dr. Roman Töppel for helping me validate and provide additional information for clearing up this issue. Thank you for watching and see you next time.